Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another show, Jim Hall, You Ought to Know. And we're coming to you from the Wings of Freedom Tour. And you can see B-17 aircraft, B-24 Liberator right here in the background. And yes, we're out here on the tarmac getting up and personal with the aircraft. You can climb up inside. Take a look. And they're going to be here at Brackett Field a couple days. In fact, go to the website. You'll be able to look for information. We'll have it here on the screen for you. And you'll want to see this particular show. We're going to be taking flights in that B-24 Liberator right back here. We're actually going to fly in that aircraft today during this show. You have the opportunity to come out and fly in a B-17, in a B-24 Liberator. Or how about this? Take a look right over here. This is the P-51 Mustang. In fact, this is the only dual-control P-51 Mustang, and you can actually come out and take the controls and fly the P-51. That's right, we're here at Brackett Field, and I've got the boys out here, Caden and Connor, both right here, getting ready to fly, and they're up close and personal with the aircraft today, simply because we hope you're going to stay with us. You ought to know. Great show coming up. Yeah, we're going to go flying. How about that? Welcome back, everybody. Jim Hall, You Ought to Know. We're at Brackett Field in Laverne, just adjacent to the LA County Fairgrounds is where we are. Beautiful day out here. In fact, almost 90 degrees as we're doing this particular show. And this happens to be an exciting day. Jason, introduce yourself.
My name is Jason Owen. I'm with the Collins Foundation.
And the Collins Foundation is responsible for what?
Preservation of the warbirds here and history.
And this is something that goes on. This is actually a tour. Talk about the tour.
Well, the tour, this is the 22nd year of the tour with the B-17 and the B-24.
And that's what we've got here on the ground at Brackett Field, and you're making a tour, came in today for this particular show from Lake Havasu, and you're going to be making the rounds. And people get a up-close and personal look at the aircraft. You got the 17, you got the 24. Let's talk about the 24. That's what's back here now, that what we're looking at. And this particular aircraft, talk about that.
Well, this airplane was restored back in '85 and started its tour in '86, and then the duo between the 17 and the 24 started in 1990.
And the 24 we've got here has some history behind it. It was actually where and came out of storage and was refurbished.
This airplane actually saw service in the Pacific, and then it was eventually abandoned in India. And in 1985, the airplane was brought back up through restoration to fly. Its maiden flight was in '89, and then that's when the tour started with this airplane.
And this particular tour, this is the Wings of Freedom tour that the aircraft go on, is that right?
Correct.
And this one, people can come out, they pay a nominal fee admission to get through the gate, and they can get up and they can actually go in the aircraft, look around, but there's a lot more than that you can actually do, right?
Right. Not only can you go inside the airplane and see what it was like, but you can also have the opportunity to go up and fly in the airplane.
Now, they can actually fly in the plane, which means they get an opportunity to ride along with you guys when you take off.
Not just riding along. They're part of the crew. They move about. They can go from turret to turret, come up on the flight deck, walk through the bomb bay, and it's quite an experience.
They get the full treatment of what it was like.
It's a small piece of what it was like. Nobody's shooting at you, so that's a good thing. But you really appreciate the men that flew these airplanes and the equipment that they flew. There are no comforts in this, and not like the airplanes today flying on Southwest, where it's a comfortable ride wherever you're going. Somebody's serving coffee, but on this, these guys had a tough way to go, and it was a tough mission, but it was an important time in history that they took part of.
Well, they did. This particular plane, now the 24, came about when? When did it come off the assembly line?
This particular one was built in '44.
And so they were used, obviously, a warplane.
Yes, this one saw action. A lot of the airplanes that do survive today were actually built late in the war, and a lot of them did not actually see service. But this is one of the few actually war veterans that still survive.
Now, how many 24s are out there still actually flying?
This is the only B-24 Liberator that flies.
This is history right here with us.
This is it.
All right. And you've been flying. What's your background with flight? And you're the pilot here of the 24.
I started with them on this airplane back in '89, and I've been involved as a volunteer, and now I'm on full time. But everybody that's out here is pretty much a volunteer, and it's to help preserve and support the history and the veterans. I mean, this is kind of like the prop and the stage, and the veterans come out and tell their story.
Now, the foundation is based back on the East Coast, Massachusetts,
Still Massachusetts.
Right? Yeah. But you travel all over the country and the world, or?
No, just the U.S., so we have been to Alaska twice. But the tour starts in January and goes through November.
So that's a long tour. You're on the
It is
road
a
that
long
whole
tour.
time?
It's anywhere between 110 and about 130 cities every year.
And are you taking days or weeks off in between at all?
Sometimes we take a few days off here and there, but no, it's pretty much through the whole year.
You're flying. You're doing your thing here. All right.
Yeah, we fly pretty much every day.
Well, we're in Pomona, or Laverne, as I said, Brackett Field for this particular show, and we're going to get to feel what the aircraft is like. We're actually going to take a flight this afternoon here on the B-24, the only one left flying. So a lot of history here. A lot of history.
A lot of history. That's exactly right.
What is this like to handle as a pilot? Describe that one.
It's one of the more challenging airplanes that I've flown. It really makes me appreciate the guys that did fly it and learned to fly this airplane. They had to become better pilots because the airplane didn't give them a lot. They had to earn it. And it's wherever it's pointed is not where it wants to go.
All right. So how do I equate that in my terms I would understand as a non-pilot? Is it like driving my old grandfather's Studebaker without power steering and power brakes?
And with a clutch.
And with a clutch. Okay, so there's a lot to that. The B-24, the Liberty, this one's called Witchcraft. Is that what it started out as?
No, this was the All-American when we first
Got the plane?
preserved it and restored the airplane. And then it was named the All-American, which was appropriate because a lot of people from all over the country were involved. And it was really the veterans' vision to see this airplane fly. The foundation saw their vision was a static display. And since this was really the first one in private hands, they were pretty excited about seeing this airplane back in the air and getting the B-24, airworthy again.
All right.
So it was their drive that raised the funds and got the participation of volunteers to come ahead and get involved.
How many people are going to be on board? How many can this hold today?
We'll have 10.
10 people on board. All right, we're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for talking with us. A lot of history right here, the B-24, and we're going to fly on it this afternoon, and you're going to get a chance to go with us right here. Stay with us. We're here at Brackett Field for the Wings of History Tour. It's all about freedom. It's about history. It's about, well, what the military went through, and you're part of it. Simply because, like with all of our shows, you ought to know. Stay with us. More yet to come. Welcome back, everybody. Jim Hall, you ought to know. I told you we're here in Laverne. Brackett Field is where we are, adjacent to the LA County Fairgrounds. And we're here for the Wings of Freedom Tour. Aircraft out here, I told you when we introed the show, there's a B-17, there's a B-24 Liberator, the only one left flying, and there's a dual-stick P-51 Mustang. And everybody knows about the P-51, especially this guy. Introduce yourself.
I'm Pat McGarry.
Pat, you're a pilot of the P-51?
I am. I brought the Mustang in today to Brackett Field.
And you're from where? Where are you?
I live in Arizona, and I fly the plane when it's out in the southwest here.
So Arizona, is that home for the aircraft?
No, airplane kind of lives on the road for about 10 months, and takes a 2-month break in the winter for maintenance, and other than that, it's just on the road.
Well, when it's on the road, a lot of time on the road because the stops, if you check the website, this thing goes and goes and goes and goes.
It does.
How many hours a year you think this does?
We're probably putting 400 hours a year on it.
Okay. So that's a lot of stick time.
That's a lot of time for a Mustang. Yeah. And there's about 10 different pilots for this airplane we rotate through. And
so how much time will you actually spend on the road with this one?
I'm flying it for 2 weeks this time. I'll usually come out for a couple weeks, a couple times a year, and fly it.
Okay. On this particular tour, the 51 you've got here, as I mentioned, this is a dual stick. It means you can actually take somebody along and they get the experience what it's like to fly this.
Yeah, that's the great part is you get to go for a ride in this and get some stick time. And I'm a flight instructor, so if you bring your logbook, we can, for pilots, they can put it in their logbook.
So it all counts.
It does. It does. You get, it's kind of a lot of guys, a lot of pilots come out. It's a bucket list item for about any pilot. Want to fly a P-51. This is one of the few places you can do it.
Well, probably a lot of people didn't know they could do this, and so on this show they're going to learn not only can they come out and see it up close, but they can actually take a flight in it. Now, if they want to do that, what type of cost is associated with it?
It's $2,200 for a half-hour ride, or $3,200 for the full hour, and it is expensive. It costs a lot to bring it out here and maintain it, but everyone that goes in it says it's worth it.
Well, this is one of those once-in-a-lifetime type experience type deals. Not for you, obviously, but for those that really want to come out and experience it, or maybe they flew in the war and they want to do one more time.
Yeah, we've had some vets come out, and probably half the guys I take are pilots that, just want to get that P-51 in their logbook.
Talk about the P-51. How many are still out there flying around the country?
About 150 airplanes still flying around.
And history of this one, when did it first come out? When was this one out?
This was built in 43, and it actually crashed in England, and the remains of it were brought to the U.S., rebuilt to the condition you see it now in the mid-90s. Mm-hmm. And they've had it on the road 3 or 4 years with the foundation.
So the foundation, do they actually own all the aircraft here?
They do, yeah.
And so they keep it on the road. They are the ones that have refurbished the planes and so forth to bring back the history.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what kind of history does this one have? Do you know, going back to when it was?
It was in England in 43. It crashed. A P-47 pilot was transitioning to the Mustang, and he crashed it in England. That was kind of its short-lived World War II history.
So not a long history to
No,
that.
and then it's got more history now than it did back then. You're kind of flying around now and getting people a taste of what it was like to fly a Mustang.
Now, in the 2 weeks you'll be out for this particular realm of the tour, as it were, what types of cities are you going to be going to? What's the distances?
I started out in Scottsdale, Arizona, went to Lake Havasu, Arizona, then over here. That was kind of our long hops, and then we're just bouncing around Southern California. We're here for a few days, Long Beach, Orange County in there somewhere, and down towards San Diego. So it's some real short distances between the cities now.
Yeah. Now, will you fly every day? Will somebody be wanting to go up in the 51?
Yeah. It stays fairly busy.
So you've got that. So you'll be doing some short hops with them. Probably even a lot. Your flight time this afternoon with somebody at the stick up there with you will actually be a little longer than your next hop over to Long Beach.
Right. Yeah, we're going to Long Beach. That'll be a pretty short flight.
Now, the top speed on the 51, for somebody that doesn't know, what is that?
505 miles an hour is the red line, and that's, with some power on the nose down, it'll do that.
And what's the horsepower of this particular
This
aircraft?
is 1,490 horsepower. It's got the Rolls-Royce Merlin. And
So when you started flying, what was the first aircraft you learned to fly in?
Cessna 150, like most pilots.
And you went up from there. What was your next?
Got a lot of tailwheel time, transitioned into the T6, which was the trainer for this. Got quite a lot of T6 time, and then got into a Mustang back in the mid-90s, flew that some, and then started flying this a few years ago.
First Mustang that you flew, was that for somebody else that you were actually flying?
It was a museum I volunteered at. I was a kind of volunteer mechanic and pilot for this museum, and they had some real nice airplanes, and I got to fly them.
Now, I've heard that being fairly common, that people can get stick time and actually do that, working with, we've got the Chino Museum here and some others, but that's fairly common.
Yeah, it is. You go in, put your volunteer time in, and, these museums are always looking for volunteers to come out and help, and that's kind of how it worked.
Most of your stops, will you get veterans to come up and say, I flew one of these? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every time. It's really neat. It really is so cool to have those guys come out and get to see the airplane again.
All right, well, we're going to hear it fire up this afternoon, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Look forward to that. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks for coming
P-51
out.
Mustang is out here at Brackett Field, and we hope you're going to come take the opportunity to at least come and see the aircraft. You can get up and close and personal with them, take some pictures, bring the young ones out, and let them see a piece of history. And we're out here simply because, like with all of our shows, you ought to know. Stay with us. More yet to come. Welcome back, everybody. Jim Hall. You ought to know. And what you ought to know is the Wings of Freedom Tour. It's a B-17, a B-24 Liberator, and the P-51 Mustang. And let's introduce you.
My name is Mac McCauley. I'm with the Collins Foundation. I'm one of the volunteer crewmen.
And you are the pilot here of the 17?
Pilot 17 right now. Yeah.
All right, we got to talk about the 17. This is pretty exciting stuff, but let's talk about the history of this particular aircraft right here behind us.
Right. The B-17 behind us is honoring the famous aircraft called the 909. It was one of the most famous aircraft in the 8th Air Force. It had 140 missions and never had a crew member, never lost a crew member to combat, never had an abort, and never missed a target 140 times out and back. So we are painted our airplane up to honor that great aircraft that was considered the luckiest airplane in the 8th Air Force.
The luckiest plane. A lot of skill there. It has to be a lot of skill.
It went through 5 different crews, and they passed that airplane on very gingerly. Said, take good care of it, because you took good care of us.
Well, you've been flying this one now how long?
Now about 13 years.
13 years with this particular one.
Right.
So you must know about where every screw, wire, everything.
I know what vibrates loose, yeah.
What is it like flying this one? We talked with...
It's a great airplane, it really is. It's very, very stable, but it's hard on the controls. It's like flying a cement truck.
Yeah.
You know, it's all pulley and cable, so you're actually handling it all the time you're flying. And there's no buttons to push that's going to get you to go somewhere.
Now this one's set up right now. People can fly with you. How many can you take with you?
We take a minimum of 6. We have to have that many, and then we take a maximum of 10 people.
Okay, so 10 on board.
Right.
And what was the normal crew like, the configuration?
It was 10.
That was it?
Yeah, it was 10, yeah.
So you had the pilot, co-pilot, and engineer?
And the bombardier, the navigator, you had the 2 waist gunners, a ball turret gunner, and a tail gunner.
Okay, so that makes up your crew.
That's your crew right there, yeah.
Now, does everybody have multiple duties in this aircraft when it was flying?
Most people did. The only people that didn't were basically the pilot and the co-pilot initially.
And the pilot obviously was the commander of the aircraft then?
Right, he sure was, yeah.
Now this one here, fuel-wise and so on, what are we talking about? How much fuel can this one hold?
Right now it only holds about 1,700 gallons. During the war it held about 1,000 gallons more than that.
Now you made a hop this morning or this afternoon. You got here from Lake Havasu into Brackett Field here in Southern California. Not a long flight, a little longer than your normal short hops you'll take from here to Long Beach and so forth.
Yeah.
But fuel-wise, what was it like coming across from Havasu to here? How much did you use in the 17?
Probably about 500 gallons.
So not bad.
No, it wasn't too bad. It cost us about $2,500 in fuel to get here.
Now, are you out with this plane while it's on tour year-round?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm with it about 9 months out of the year. And tours for about 10.
So you pretty much want to stay with this one. Huh?
Oh yeah. As soon as my golf game gets bad, I come back out.
Do what you know.
Yeah.
Now the history with your flying. You started flying what?
No, I started flying when I was a little kid. There was an airport between my house and school, and every once in a while I'd make it to school. So I've been flying for pretty much all my life, and I own a Stearman, and pretty much graduated into this airplane here.
Well, this was, was this the first 17 you actually flew?
Yes, it was. In fact, it's the only one I've ever flown.
This is it?
This is it, yeah.
And you started volunteering when you...
Right, we started volunteering about 13, 14 years ago. And like I say, I just keep coming out. You know, I love to talk to the veterans. That's probably why I come out as much as I do, to be able to honor the veterans and talk to their families and get their experiences and listen to some of their stories, because they're really getting great.
Well, and you know, time goes on, and the veterans getting fewer and fewer that are left to talk about that history and those stories. How many do you meet along the way? Do you usually get the benefit at each stop of finding somebody that served?
Absolutely. Usually there's 3 or 4 veterans at each stop that will come out, and I can say that because they are getting older now. They are starting to talk about it a lot like they did right after the war, and in the 60s and 70s they pretty much cleaned it up. But right now they're starting to realize that the people need to actually know what these kids did. And these were all young kids back in those days, and what they did during those times to keep our nation free.
Well, probably the greatest time of all time, certainly one of the greatest wars that anybody went through, and technology changing and what came about and what came out of it. This particular aircraft, the 17, first year out was when?
The first year out was 1937.
37 on the 17.
Right. Okay. 39 on the 24.
So you got some history there, and people, like you say, they didn't talk much about it after the fact, but now they are talking about it. Or you get people come out and say, I was on that particular, I was a gunner, I did this.
Yeah, I've met several crewmen over the years. The 909 had about 5 different crews that had so many missions, and I have met several people that were actually on the original 909, and they had some great stories to tell. Really, very camaraderie. It's just awesome, really.
When you get the crew together that you're flying with today, when you get ready to take people up in this aircraft, what do you tell them? How do you tell them to prepare for this?
Well, we have a safety briefing basically, that our flight engineer does, and they'll tell them, basically how to get around the airplane, because they're only seated for takeoff and landing. The rest of the time they're up running around the airplane and changing different positions and doing that for 30 minutes. And it's quite an experience, really. But we get a lot of people that we see, the people that are going to get emotional about it, people that actually flown in the airplanes, and tell them to, kind of be courteous and watch the veterans that come out to still fly with us.
All right. So the 17 is going to fly, the 24 will fly, and the P-51 are all going to fly. And we're here at Brackett Field.
Yes, absolutely.
Flying together?
No, we can't do that. The FAA won't let us do that on rides, but
they'll be up
we'll all
there.
be in the air together.
They'll
Yeah.
all be up in the air. And you get the opportunity to do that, too. You can come to Brackett Field or check out the website, better yet. It's right here on the screen, and you'll be able to see where the tour is headed next, and you can be a part of it. Simply because, like with all of our shows, you ought to know. We're going flying next, so don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back to wrap it up. Well, that's going to put the wraps on another show, everybody. Jim Hall, You Ought to Know. And today we got to fly on board this one right here, the only one left flying in the world, the B-24 Liberator. A little bit of history, the Wings Over Freedom Tour, and we're at Brackett Field in Laverne, Southern California. And you got a chance to fly with us on this particular show. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you'll join us at yououghtaknowtv.com. You can go to the website anytime and see all the shows, yououghtaknowtv.com. Better yet, join us on the channel every single day and experience our shows. Caden and Connor are around here somewhere. They're probably climbing around in the B-17 or the P-51. Who knows? We'll see you next time, everybody. We hope you got a little bit of history and enjoyed the show. And like always, thanks for joining us, simply because you ought to know. See you next time.